you done now?
Broadcasting live from Houston, Texas, and around the world. TV host, best-selling author, and radio personality Brad Gilmore brings you a collection of conversations with stars from movies.
Mark Wahlberg.
Hey, how are you?
The legendary Mr. Christopher Lloyd. Christopher, how are we doing?
I'm doing good. Great introduction.
Television.
Jimmy Fallon joins us this morning. Jimmy, how you doing, my friend?
Good morning. Thank you so much, Brad, for having me. I appreciate this, bud.
Kelly Ripa.
Brad, thank you for having me.
Comedy.
Jay Leonard joins us. Jay, how you doing?
Hey, Brad, what's going on?
Gabriel Fluffy Iglesias.
Good morning.
Music.
Lola Monroe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The legendary frontman of AC/DC, Brian Johnson, joins us right now. Brian, how you doing?
Good morning, Brad. What looking at you, give me funny, lad.
Grammy Award winner Maya joins us.
How are you?
And more. This is The Collection. Now your host, The Boat, Brad Gilmore.
I'm so excited to talk to our next guest, who's the author of the brand new book that just came out a couple days ago. And guys, y'all gonna love the concept behind this book. It's a travel guide to the afterlife because it's called 100 Places to See After You Die. And the man, the myth, the legend joins us right now. Ken Jennings is on the line. Ken, how are we doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Congratulations on the book. I mean, the book is out. I love the concept of this thing, by the way. And correct me if I'm wrong. This idea came to you when you misread the title of something. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's like the hackiest thing. This is like my only book where the title came first. I was just in an airport waiting for a flight, and I was looking at a table that had some of these 1,000 things to see and do before you die, you know, these kind of books, right? And I was looking upside down, and I thought it said 1,000 places to die before you see. And I thought, hey, like that's actually a pretty good idea for a book. So I spent a few years reading up on the history of the afterlife and human descriptions of it. And you know, I'm a Jeopardy guy. I'm interested in everything, but it turned out this was a fascinating subject.
So when you get this title, and I think it's cool because you're having to kind of reverse engineer around this concept, around this title, and this idea. You research the afterlife. What are do you outline hey, after your research, here are the 100 places, or did you have to whittle it down from 200 to 100? How does that happen?
Well, I wanted to really vividly describe afterlives. You know, people who had visions. You know, unique places you could actually take someone through. Here's what the street food you want to eat if you're in the afterlife from Coco, and here's where you want to stay in Dante's Inferno, and here are the punishments to avoid in this Hieronymus Bosch painting. I wanted to have all these little details, like it was a travel guide. So it really meant just reading everything, you know, all these Buddhist sutras and medieval mystics who had glimpsed heaven and visions, all the rest, and, you know, watch every episode of every TV, you know, The Good Place or The Simpsons or The Twilight Zone where they happen to go to the afterlife. You know, I really wanted to be exhaustive, and it gradually got up to 100, and I thought, hey, that's a book.
Now, during your research, and you have these 100 places, this is my question, because no matter where people go, whether they travel here in the United States, travel abroad, or in your case, traveling to the afterlife, the one thing that's always on everybody's mind is, okay, but who has the best food, right? So in the afterlife, who has the best food? What are the buffets that we're hitting up? Who has the most finest cuisine? Do we find them in Dante's Inferno? Do we find them in the Simpsons version of the afterlife or the Twilight Zone, like you just mentioned? Who has the best food, Ken Jennings?
Well, in a lot of versions of hell, there's beautiful banquets, but you never get to eat any of it. Like in the Greek Hades, if you try to eat the amazing-looking Greek food, these harpies fly down and they start pooping all over the table. In Hindu mythology, you see these beautiful Indian buffets laid out with refreshing yogurt, and you're like, oh man, I wish I could have some of that mango yogurt. And then you just get rushed on by, and they're like, hey buddy, you didn't give to the poor in life, so now you don't get any food now. So the best foods obviously are in heaven. You want to have maybe the roast pork in Valhalla. You want the delicious figs in the Egyptian afterlife. But I think you can't beat the Mexican food in Coco, the movie Coco. You know, there's elote and street food and all kinds of booths where you can get tacos. There's cantinas. It really looks good.
Mexican food. You're a man after my own heart, Ken Jennings. Ken Jennings is the author of 100 Places to See After You Die, a travel guide to the afterlife, also known as the host, one of the hosts of the game show Jeopardy. I am a massive game show fan, as obviously you are as well. I, though, wanted to ask you this because you were the most winningest Jeopardy contestant of all time, but you once said that on your dream board for Jeopardy, a category would be 80s pro wrestling. Now, I'm a hellacious pro wrestling fan, and I just have to know, was that a joke, or are you actually an 80s pro wrestling aficionado?
No, that's dead serious. That's the era of my childhood. So that's when I was like most connected to wrestling and wrestlers, and it's just something you never go on Jeopardy and see a clue about like Coco Beware or Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I think we should have more of that.
I think we should have more of it too, Ken Jennings. But who was your guy growing up? Were you a Hogan guy? Were you a Macho Man guy? Who was your number one?
Absolutely Macho Man, like Stone the Side guy. Talent, amazing performance.
Macho Man, top to bottom, one of the greatest of all time. Ken Jennings is talking to us right now. He has a brand new book out that everyone should get, 100 Places to See After You Die, a travel guide to the afterlife. Here's another Jeopardy question, though, for you, because a couple years ago, I got to go to a taping of The Tonight Show. It was actually the 1,000th episode of Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show, and I'm fascinated by late-night television and game shows. So when I went to the show for the first time and I'm sitting in the audience, I found myself watching the inner workings of The Tonight Show, like when they cut to commercial, what happens during the breaks, where's the cue card guy stand, how does Jimmy, find his spot in the monologue, more than I found myself watching the actual show sometimes. For you being a Jeopardy superfan growing up and then taking that stage, did you have a similar experience where you're saying, oh, that's how they indicate when it's time to do the buzzers. The lights are off to the left side of the camera. Trebek's over here. This is a smaller studio than I imagined. Was that your experience?
Yeah, all those things. I mean, obviously, I'd been there 100 times as a contestant, so I knew some of the secrets. That the host entertains the audience during the break. Here's when the cameras move. Here's how the crane gets over there to do the interview shot. One thing I didn't learn until I was host, this is a pretty good little Jeopardy secret, is that it was always Alex himself that would hit the time's up button. So he'd ask a clue, and then he'd watch, and if he could tell nobody knew it, he would just hit the button and be like, boop, 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 boop. Oh, I'm sorry, you're out of time. Look at that. But that was just him hitting the button as soon as he thought, nah, these bozos don't know it.
Oh, that's awesome. I had no idea that he was controlling that. For you, I guess the question would be, what was more difficult? And I think I probably know the answer, but is it being the contestant and trying to keep that streak going, or is the hosting offer more challenges than maybe you expected and you find that aspect a little bit more difficult?
I mean, being a contestant is very intense because you're a civilian. You've never been on TV before, and suddenly you're in this very nerve-wracking situation, and you know that 2/3 of you are not going to make it to the end of the show. It's a battlefield out there. But honestly, like, hosting is harder. The mechanics of the job are very difficult. And the home viewer doesn't often realize, because Alex made it look so easy. He was graceful. He did it for 38 years. He was just perfect at that job, and I think a lot of people are like, well, the host just reads the clues. What could be easier? But actually, the pace of it is very difficult. You really have to do everything the contestants do. You're really playing the game in your head along with them. But you also have to adjudicate their answers, like be a referee. You've got to explain the game scenario to the home audience, like you're a sportscaster. You've got to entertain the crowd, like you're a stadium announcer. You're doing all this stuff at once, and you're kind of playing Jeopardy along with them. And it turns out that with some practice, I'm getting there, but it's not as easy as Alex made it look, I'll tell you.
Now, you have 100 Places to See After You Die. That's the name of the book. And this is my final question to you, Ken Jennings. If you were to have an on-location edition of Jeopardy, and you could host it at any of these 100 places that you have researched, all these afterlives, where would be the best backdrop for a Jeopardy match in the afterlife?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I mean, that would be a great version of Jeopardy because you could have like Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein. You could have all the smart celebrities of the past. So you want to go to a heaven with some really good celebrities. The best backdrop might actually be Field of Dreams, like a beautiful cornfield, a grass lawn, old-timey baseball going on. I feel like they could set up a Jeopardy set there. It'd be a nice Iowa vibe. I'd go for that.
Okay, I love it. Well, Ken Jennings is here, 100 Places to See After You Die, a travel guide to the afterlife. The book is out now. Ken, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, and really a success to you on the show and the book.
Thank you for watching. I appreciate it.
Have a good one. Ken Jennings, everyone.
Hurry up, tape running out.